Evaporation in Timberborn happens in some pretty mysterious ways, oftentimes happening even in situations where there shouldn't really be any evaporation at all. This is because the game needs to be optimized and it can't really take every single factor into account. But let's be honest, there are still situations where evaporation should really not happen. So in this video, we will be discussing exactly how evaporation works, how you can minimize it, and whether or not it is a good idea to make your canals wider. The way evaporation works is that every single tile is given a number. This number determines how much water is going to evaporate from that water body. For example, the 1x1 tile over here evaporates insanely quickly, followed by all the linear ones, and then we move on to the 2x2 tile, followed by the other 2x canals. There are of course some diminishing returns as you increase the size of your reservoir, but you can pretty much just assume that the larger your water reservoir, the less evaporation you will face. So what exactly determines how much water is going to evaporate? For every exposed water tile, a number is calculated. This number determines how much water is going to be evaporating, and it is determined by counting the number of tiles adjacent to the water tile itself. Now we're not going to be talking about the actual calculations that happen under the hood, because the most relevant variable involved is the number of tiles that are exposed at any given time. But how exactly does the system determine which tile is exposed and which tile is not? The general rule of thumb which applies is that the topmost layer of water is where the water is going to evaporate from. But this does not always apply, and we are going to find an exception to this rule. So the depth of your reservoir doesn't really matter and simply acts as a multiplier. What exactly do I mean by it acting as a multiplier? Let us do some math over here. This is a 3x3, and it's generally considered a decent assumption that it takes 9 or 10 days for a 3x3 to evaporate. But since this 3x3 is 2 tiles deep, it's gonna take twice that amount to evaporate, so about 20 days. We have some more reservoirs over here, and these ones are covered with impermeable floors. However, covering the reservoir does not actually decrease or increase the evaporation at all, which I hope is something that changes in the future, because pressurized pipes and vessels should really not be evaporating. Now let's do a quick recap of what we know so far, and then we're gonna test a crazy theory. So evaporation depends on the number of tiles around, a water tile. For example, a 1x1 tile has no tiles surrounding it, whereas in the case of a 1x2, each tile has one other tile around it. As these get longer, we get more tiles with 2 neighbors around it, while the edges always have a single neighbor. Which is why you do see slightly less evaporation the longer your canal is, but it doesn't really make a huge difference beyond the initial few tiles. Let us now test a crazy theory. My theory is that the one on the left over here is going to evaporate much faster than the one on the right, even though they're both 3x3 at the surface. And when I talk about evaporating much faster, I actually just mean the top layer over here, and you're about to find out why. You see, the reservoir on the left has some overhanging terrain every now and then. This terrain piece over here actually doesn't have any terrain underneath it, and water can gather up. And my theory was that these 3 blocks of water over here actually contribute to the evaporation as well. So even if the entire reservoir is full, but you just happen to have some straight terrain blocks in there, yeah, everything is going to evaporate much faster than you originally thought. Which actually brings me back to my playthrough on spillage over here. There is a lot of water exposed on this map, and luckily we're not playing on hard mode, otherwise we would have been screwed. But when I was building this underground network of pipes, more than a couple of you were not happy with these really thin and really straight pipes. And yes, you guys are correct that in order to maximize the water over here, we should actually make these 3x3s. So those are exactly the orders I'm going to assign over here. But while doing this over here is going to be beneficial, it's not actually as beneficial as you might think. Because yes, there is going to be less water evaporating per tile. However, there are going to be more tiles where the water can actually evaporate from. And really soon you run into the problem where the only thing that actually matters is the length of your canal and your pipes instead of how wide they are. I mean, we basically have to do another test, right? Yeah, let's do it. We have a bunch of water sources over here filling up all of these tanks. The first one over here is a 3x3 with a canal that is only 1 tile wide. The second one over here you've already seen. It has these overhanging terrains inside of the reservoir. And the canal over here is also just 1 tile wide. The third one over here is once more a 3x3. There are no overhanging terrains inside of it, and the canal is 3 tiles wide. The fourth one over here has a canal that is 4 tiles wide. However, we do have some additional blocks at the base level down there, just so we can have the same amount of water in all of these. Except this one though. This one we don't really care about. Keep in mind that there is no water leaking at the end over here. And already all of the reservoirs are down to the exact same spot. Let's just run this once more and see what exactly is going on. Water cannot escape from downstream. All of these dams are full. These gates over here have been stopped and only the bottom ones are working. Let us now unpause and see what exactly happens to these dams. And as you can see very quickly over here, all the water just disappears. Down to the point where the actual difference between the 1 wide canal and the 3 wide canal is just all about the evaporation in the final layer. But you know, while the water actually ran out really fast, the final tile still stayed for an incredibly long while. And if I'm being honest, then that just makes me question the validity of this entire test. So maybe we just need to test this again with bigger reservoirs, you know? This time, however, we're just gonna disable the building models entirely and look at the water towers themselves. Let's go. As expected, the one with the overhangs is depleting the fastest. However, the 3x3 with the 1 wide canal is, isn't so far behind. So while the overhangs did make a difference, they were not that relevant at the end. But once more, the 3 wide canal and the 4 wide canal both went through the water tower itself fairly quickly. Most of the difference seems to be coming into play when you reach the final tile over here. Let me now bring you to the most amazing page on the Timberborn wiki, the evaporation page. And that is because when you scroll down, we have a calculator that I wanted to introduce at the start of this video, but it's much easier to understand now that we've been through, all the hard work. Let us get ourselves a 1 wide canal and we are gonna set the water depth over here to 1. Now take a look at this number over here, which is the number that matters to us, because this is the amount of water that we're going to be using from our reservoir. At this point, with just 7 tiles in this canal, we are going to be using 1.5 tiles of water per day. However, if I just make this longer over here, we're using 2.7 tiles at this point. Let's save this number over here for us. Now we're going to upgrade to a 2 wide canal, and as you can see, the number did go down. And finally, with the 3 wide canal, the number goes down a bit more than the previous drop. However, it is still 2.37 tiles per day. Take a look at what happens if I now add another layer over here. All of a sudden, the total evaporation went up to 3 tiles per day. Additionally, take a look at what happens if I just make my canal slightly shorter. So instead of a really long 3 wide canal, you can somehow get stuff done in a half as long 2 wide canal. Well, you have just cut down your total evaporation by a crap ton actually. When comparing different canal lengths with a 1 wide canal, instead of the water lasting several times longer, it's just going to last at maximum 12% more. And under no circumstances should you actually increase your canal's width to 4 tiles. And the most important takeaway over here should be the fact that whenever possible, you should use shorter canals instead of opting for wider ones. Keep in mind that I said shorter and not narrower. Narrower? Yeah, I don't know English anymore. So I'm just gonna leave you guys over here with some random math notes. Bye!